Joining me now, former Obama campaign manager and White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, Jim Messina. Emily Tisch Sussman is a Democratic strategist and host of the brand new podcast, Your Primary Playlist, which debuted today. Congrats on that. So look, Jim, it's early, but there's a pretty big distinction when you look at the leaders and the laggers. 20% of New Hampshire voters like Biden, less than 10% back Bernie. And this is not the first poll we've seen him slide in. And this is a state where he beat Hillary Clinton in the primary with 60% of the vote. What do you make of these results in New Hampshire?
Boy, they're a real problem sign for Senator Sanders. I mean, here's a state he won in 2016. It's a state he almost has to win, given the early primary calendar. It's a state that he's from Vermont, right next door. It's a state where he has a bunch of advantages. And the fact that he's sliding this early is a real warning sign, and a sign that, Elizabeth Warren's surge in the national polls is hurting him here, too. She, too, is a next-door state candidate, and her numbers are starting to come right out of his, and in a way that helps Vice President Biden. And if you're Bernie Sanders, as you know, Chris, I don't like polls, but this is a sign very early that they got to think about what they're doing and what their approach is, because they're not catching on.
Yeah, and they're not lacking money, which is not the case for a lot of other people, Emily. These fundraising numbers, take, for example, South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who kind of amassed a small fortune. And then you have Beto O'Rourke, $3.6 million raised in the second quarter. He raised almost twice that much in his first day. Very telling there. And his burn rate, which is the money raised versus the money spent, was 146%. How does he rebound from that position?
Yeah, I think what that says is that whatever his strategy is kind of not working. It's kind of not resonating. It's not for a lack of spending the money. I think at this point, I think the raised dollars, the spend dollars are important, but also the cash on hand. How much do they have overall? Because what that's going to tell us is actually how long can they stay in this race. People don't drop out of the race just because they're not feeling it anymore. People encourage them. The only reason they drop out of the race is because they've run out of money.
Yeah.
So, even though Sanders is slipping in the polls, still has a lot of money.
He's not going anywhere for a while.
No, and I think what we've seen from 2016 is he actually doesn't really mind being a spoiler in a race, so he will actually stay in for a long time as long as he still has that money rolling in.
Yeah, Beto O'Rourke's not alone, Jim. 11 Democratic presidential candidates spent more than they raised in the second quarter of the year. How much will a financial squeeze, do you think, winnow the field, and pretty early on?
Oh, I think you're exactly right. It's going to winnow the field very, very quick. Money in a presidential race is oxygen, and these candidates are going to run out of oxygen if they can't stay competitive. And some of these candidates are spending historic amounts of money. I mean, Elizabeth Warren spent $11 million in this quarter, and, the question will be what she has to show for it. Going forward, Beto's betting heavily on a field campaign and is putting all of his money into a field campaign. Probably a smart bet if you're him. But some of these other candidates have got to start, saving resources.
But isn't the problem with that, Jim, isn't the problem that for most people who aren't Biden or Bernie, they need the name recognition. So they're really just trying to get their name out there. They're trying to have people start to feel comfortable with them. I guess you tell me, you're the one who's the campaign expert, but the political calculation inside is unless we get more people to understand who we are and what we stand for early, we're not going to make it to the first vote in Iowa, the first caucus.
Yes and no. It's why the debates are so important, right? You've got to have good debates. You've got to be on the debate stage and find a way to catch fire. I'm really skeptical about a bunch of early spending this early, especially on TV and other things that I just don't think really move Democratic primary voters. And you kind of got to look at some of the spending. Emily had it right earlier. You care more about what you have in the bank right now than you do what you've already spent. And, the new calendar the Democrats enacted, moving California and Texas up early to right after the first four states, makes money even more important than it's ever been in a Democratic primary. You're going to need $100 to $150 million to compete in California and Texas, New Hampshire, Iowa, and Nevada. And those are just huge numbers for some of these candidates who are spending unprecedented amounts of money this early. People got to put some money in the piggy bank because the big spending's coming up very soon.
And I'd actually say it's even more than just getting your name out is where where they want to be spending the money. It's the September Democratic debate. If they can't get on that stage with the new threshold of 130,000 individual donors, you're basically not a serious candidate. So a lot of campaigns are spending tons of money, even up to $40 a person, to acquire new low-dollar donors just to be able to hit that threshold. So, you know, someone like Beto, who has a huge, massive list to call from and fundraise from, he can put money into field. But most candidates actually have to spend their money acquiring small-dollar donors at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see if we have, for example, say, well, who we have on stage together in the next debate. But in September, we may be looking at a fairly small, I think if you look at some analysis, 6 to 8 people may be actually on that debate stage, make that level in September. But I want to play something that Joe Biden was asked, and we were playing a little more of Mika's interview earlier. Why hasn't President Obama endorsed him? And Jim, I want to get your reaction to his answer to that question.